Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. And here we are on our first podcast of Bicerin. We first started having this idea because we had a lot of ideas in our mind. And here is myself, Antonello. You might already have familiarized with me with my articles. And then we have Edward.
Welcome to our first podcast. Should be fun.
Brilliant. So it might be the first of a series, different topics. And we always talk about a lot of stuff at work. So now we're thinking, as a first episode, we take it easy, don't we, Ed?
Yeah. We don't want to do anything too complicated.
That's it.
I mean, we don't know anything.
So it would be a very informal chat. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comment section. We try to answer it, and maybe suggestion for the next episodes.
Yes.
So we thought as a first topic was.
What brought us to spirituality? Yeah, because we've both had this recent kind of journey in spiritual fields, and I think it's worth just talking about what brought us to it, or what we think it means. Really. Yeah. How about you? You go first.
So I always had a feeling that there was something a bit more to life than just having a job. A scientific job. I mean, you, Edward, you're an optometrist. I'm a dispensing optician. And, I've always been doing things very connected to science. I have a foundation degree in engineering. On top of that, my qualification to physics, optics. Yet, I could not find meaning in anything else doing it, and I've been doing. And I had a good glimpse of what meaning could be when I started, my journey into art.
Right.
What about you, Edward?
Well, I'd like to pick at that a little bit first, actually. So, what do you mean by meaning when you say when you started doing art, you had a glimpse into what?
Yeah. So when I started making art, I was quite attracted to the traditional way of making art, which is the academic way. Is a way that everybody can learn. But what attracted to me most was every time I was drawing, while either it was in the studio or outdoors, for very brief moments, I was losing the sense of self. I had no idea who I was. I was just in the moment. And I knew I was making something, but there was no ego. All of my thoughts were gone, and there was just me, conscious of drawing, and the drawing, or the painting.
It's interesting because it sounds very like Csikszentmihalyi's idea of flow states, right? And he is or was a scientist, someone who comes up with a hypothesis and designs an experiment and tests it and observes what happens. So he's a scientist. I think that place where they intermingle is really what interests me. That place where science and what would traditionally be called spirituality kind of meet. Because when you enter that flow state, when you do something creative, like art or music or writing or whatever, I think you get a glimpse of what spiritual people mean when they say they've seen God or touched the divine or something, or had kensho. I think there's a glimpse of it in that. What do you think? I think that might be
100%. I could not point a finger. I couldn't grasp what it was. I literally couldn't. But I felt for a moment that there was a collapse between my brain and the object.
Interesting.
I felt like there was no distance.
Yeah.
I felt at once.
Yeah.
And I had the great luck of meeting a teacher called Robert Rigrock. He lives in London. And he's spiritual as well. I don't think he's done any work like we've done, but he did have a glimpse of that as well. And he told me, do not focus too much on the teachings I'm giving you. Focus on that state. Because once you're in that state, you can learn and create art faster than anybody can.
Yeah.
And he wasn't wrong.
No, it's very true.
In 6 months, I achieved the drawing skill that he had. And it took him years to get to that level. And wait a moment, I'm having a sip of Bicerin. And same it was for painting. And, then I started learning, fresco painting. And I managed to paint even though I have some nerve damage in my eyes and I can't see very saturated colors. And then after I learned how to sculpt as well with stones at a speed that today, in art schools, they tell people, oh, you have to go through our 6 years school to gain a good understanding.
Well, yeah, I think we know what schools are really, don't we? Businesses, but yeah, I wonder if all the learnings that you undertake when you undertake an apprenticeship, in art, I wonder if all the things that you learn, the point of them is that you learn them to such a degree that you forget them, and then you start to create art.
Yes, because what happens? The brain is funny. The mind is funny. It gets in the way a lot. I learned this while I was sculpting, while I was dealing with very expensive items. And if you carve a stone that costs £10,000, and then you chip a bit, and you have to buy a new stone. So there's two ways to approach such a work. Even when you're sculpting other stuff, is you can worry about it. You're like, oh my God, am I going to do it? And you approach it with fear. Or you get lost in the future and you start thinking, oh, I need to make this look like this. It's not looking that good now. Why is that? And you get stuck. Third approach is just to focus on what you're doing. Get lost in the present. And it comes. It comes alive.
There's a paradox there, isn't it? Because you want to be careful because you don't want to damage the expensive material, but equally, the more careful you are, the less actually careful you're going to be.
And I guess because you write, don't you? So it probably is something very similar to writing, where how do you relate that to writing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so my just to take a small step back to go forward. So my introduction to spirituality was a kind of turbulent. So I again studied a science degree, studied optometry, and that's my background. And I was always into the sciences. I always kind of thought that was what I was made for because I was good at them. But sometime in my 20s, I discovered yoga as a physical practice. Western yoga, mostly the point of it was to soothe aching muscles, really. But there was, again, like you, I saw something more there. I saw something more. Now, I've been a musician in my life. I've been around art in some form or another, but there was something about yoga at that time for me in that place that really showed me that there was something more.
How so, though?
Well, I think I was accidental, and this is interesting because I've been reading about the five Tozin's 5 ranks, and the first rank is that you realize that there's something more. Now, not that you're looking for it. It always seems accidental. It always comes to find you.
It is, yeah.
And it did come to find me. So I went to yoga, right? The reason I went was I had iliotibial fasciitis, so tight iliotibia, and it got inflamed and it started pulling on my knee. And I went to yoga for that purpose, and it worked. It was great. That was why I went there. So I wasn't going there for awakening. It was completely for a different purpose. And the awakening just kind of found me, this kind of feeling that I'm not seeing everything. Moved on from teacher to teacher and eventually kind of got interested in meditation and listening to different people from different traditions talk about what it is that we're all seeking. Now, so then in the middle of all of that, I did a liberal arts degree, so a creative writing and English literature, and there was elements in that because it was a kind of a comprehensive, if you like, liberal arts degree. There was philosophy, there was art history, there was architecture. So I was kind of looking at all of these things thinking, it's all the same, isn't it? It's the point is that we're trying to express something.
Yes.
We're trying to find something.
Yes.
We're doing it for another purpose. We think we're designing a building, painting a painting, writing a novel.
Yeah.
That's what we think we're doing, but we're not really, are we?
Yeah.
What we're doing is seeking meaning.
Yes. I always got bugged, because I did classical. I did a type of school that it's dying. It doesn't exist anymore. You could relate, as it's called classical lyceum in Italy, and it's the equivalent of very old grammar schools in England. Right. So it's the normal high school in Italy is 5 years, but this one is 6 years because you need a year preparation to study Latin, Greek, and all those stuff to learn it. And I remember I was studying Latin, Greek, literature, philosophy, and all of that. And then after I finished the high school, they said, "Oh, if you want, this school is quite good to go study philosophy, or to go study classical literature, or modern literature, or poetry course." And in my head, I was thinking, aren't they all the same?
Yeah.
Aren't we putting boundaries when there actually aren't?
Yeah. This is true. We do love a boundary in a box, don't we?
Yeah. So I was quite taken aback from it because I was coming from a high school where, the philosophy teacher all of a sudden was switching to literature, and all of a sudden was switching to poetry too.
Yeah, well, they're the same thing.
They're the same. Right? They are. and this. Then what happens? These boundaries start coming up in our mind, and we start perceiving the world in that way.
Yeah.
And it happened a lot during my foundation degree in engineering. That during my physics lessons, there's also this hate between math professors and physics professors. Because the physics professors only see maths as a tool to understand reality.
It means to an end.
Yeah. So sometimes the concepts do not exactly relate to how the mathematicians would, the equations.
Yeah.
And at times, I would always say to my professors, this is an approximation. Real or reality is not what's happening. And the professor wouldn't understand me. He said, no, this is how reality is. I said, no, this is an approximation of reality. These equations are approximation of reality.
Yeah.
They're not the reality.
Yeah.
But he would
they're an abstraction. Yeah.
But he wouldn't, you see how subtle that is?
Yeah.
And also when I was studying maths, pure maths, so with pure calculus at university level, I would look at my professor and saying, I'm not understanding this concept. I get it. Can you please explain me the graphical meaning? Because I would understand most of them in a minute by graphic. And they wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
A lot of them do not put in the work to actually understanding the meaning of what they're doing.
Yeah.
They do get the data, but they don't understand the graphical meaning of what they're doing.
Yeah. I think I find this, the older I get, the more I see, the more specialized someone becomes, the better they get at a thing.
Yeah.
The more tunnel vision they get.
Yes.
So they because they're so good at whatever maths, classical mathematics, or they don't really actually see the world anymore.
Yes, and this doesn't happen just in math. It happens with doctors.
In everything. Doctors is
it happens with doctors.
It's a really good example. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for doctors, for example, you have a fasciitis. I don't know. Maybe an orthopedic said you need surgery.
Yeah.
And he thinks he fixed it, but maybe your problem started from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he only focused on that because that's what he studied.
Yeah.
It's a bit like horses, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they have
this.
Yeah. So clearly this was a crisis point for me, especially when, I don't know for you, but I reached a crisis point, when I was having problems, with, arts, because, life in arts has a lot of highs and a lot of lows. The highs are very high, the lows are very lows. And I just could not find happiness outside of me.
Yeah.
All the things that I thought would bring me happiness did not work.
No, they don't.
I thought maybe this would be my dream job, art, and it didn't bring me happiness.
Yeah.
I bought a place and I thought it would bring me happiness. It didn't. I had a relationship with a very nice girl, which I thought she would, and I thought it would bring me happiness. It didn't.
Yeah.
I was about to buy a car because I thought I'd be happy. It didn't. And all of a sudden, I went, hold on, maybe the answer is inside. And that's how I stumbled upon, thanks to our talks that we used to talk between us at work, I stumbled upon, in a serious way, with Buddhism.
Yeah.
I remember walking in London, and I saw this building, London Buddhist Society, and I was like, do you know what? I think there's something in it that could work for me. And that's how it started. What about you?
Because you did try, before we move on to me, you did try the MBSR, didn't you? The scientific approach to mindfulness-based stress reduction.
100%.
And what did you think of that? How do you... Yeah, because I have my opinions on this, but you go first.
Yeah, so I'm a kind of learner. I'm a learner. I pick things up. Yeah, I pick things up. And I found, a lot of truth in the mindfulness course. I found that, if we all learn that, maybe we don't even need therapy, most of us. Part of it brought me to Buddhism.
Yeah.
The reason why I found Buddhism the way for me to tap into, the world of unconsciousness, mindfulness, because I found their teachings convenient for me. I just found them easy to understand for me.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends can't, they don't work for them, but their framework was easy for me to understand, especially Zen Buddhism.
Why?
Because it's a list, they just give you simple teachings.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, there's always a lot of misconception, in the philosophy world.
Yeah.
Buddhism is a philosophy. No, it's a religion. It's neither of those.
No, it's not really.
The two biggest minds of our time in Buddhism, which is Thich Nhat Hanh, who just died, and also the Dalai Lama, and also all the various Rinpoches around Europe, they all say, we are not a religion, we are not a philosophy, we are simple teachings. Buddha was a human. He figured some stuff out. It was good. He's our teacher. He's an example to follow.
Yeah.
But he's not revered.
Yeah. He's not a god.
He's not a god. There's no faith in him. These are just teachings. And there's no point. What also fascinated me is we do not focus on theory. Because, yes, our teaching, someone who's very clever can actually discover that by themselves.
Yeah.
But there's no point if you don't practice.
And I love that about Buddhism, really, because it's not all about going to listen to people or learning about things. It's really, really very much all about the practice. The teachings make the practice more effective.
Yeah.
But and I think I personally think that's where the MBSR side of things falls down a little. Yes, there is the practice. Yes, it's very practical. And yes, I think it works, and it would work for a lot of people, but I think it brings you to a point and then stops. And I think once it stops, and once you feel like you've reached that plateau, you're less likely to do any more practice. But a lot of the Buddhist traditions, in a lot of the Buddhist traditions, there isn't really an end point. You can't, by definition, become a full-fledged Buddha. It's not really possible. So there's a kind of trick in there to keep you practicing, which is good because we need to practice.
Yeah, there's also from the various meetings I've done in London. There's a very good one in Rochester, in Kent. The Tibetan monks go there. The best ones are in London, really. But in Kent, there's this one in Rochester, which I invite you to go. What I like, yes, they say you need to keep practicing, obviously. But also that a lot of teachings got lost and it was the Buddha in some sutras is also written that the Buddha knew that some of his teaching would be lost. And that our attitude towards this is not to create a dogma or, to create a map and then force people to follow that map.
Yeah.
We should be like stone carvers that when a teaching gets lost, we use our brain, our methods and our practices to rediscover it.
Okay.
And go the same way that he did, or maybe find even a better way.
Yeah.
For example, Buddha knew he was speaking Agamadi as a very old language, and the people around him wanted his teachings to be written in the same language as the Vedas in Sanskrit. But he knew that language was dying. So he said, you need to use a language that's accessible. And so they did. But the whole point is to keep practice for all of us to improve. And to then, realize that life is not as we see it.
Yeah.
And since then, I found out that since I started applying these teachings, I live a lot better. And, but the funny thing is that you might agree, we're both Catholics, aren't we? We both have PTSD from Catholicism.
Traditionally,
yeah. And, we might be, because, you're born in Ireland, I'm born in Italy. You can't really escape from Catholicism.
No, really,
yeah. And so you might not be a practicant, but we are culturally ingrained. Yeah. And I found out there are a lot of teachings in Buddhism. I would say very close to 99%. They are present in our...
Oh, they're mirrored. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the stories have very much the same meanings.
Yes, all of them. But then you get lost as soon as the priest starts telling you about the grace of God and the union of all things. That's how...
I struggle with those. I struggle with Christianity more generally, because I feel like it's gotten lost in a way that is hard to describe. I think, I don't know, I think Buddhism has retained such a purity in its message that's why it works for me. The message is pretty straightforward. There's no real nonsense about it. It's just live in these ways and you'll live a better life.
Yeah.
But it's not even really telling you to do anything.
Yeah.
It's nothing specific. They're all general guidelines, and they're all general guidelines that are pretty straightforward. You could come up with them yourself, like you said. Have some time alone to sit and think, or not think, as the case may be. Live in alignment with your what's the word? Your inner, your inner beliefs.
Yeah.
All of these things are fairly straightforward. I wanted to circle back to that actually. What do we mean by spirituality? Because I think people get stuck on that, and what I don't want is for us to be talking about spirituality in scare quotes, and people to think, oh, that's not for me.
Yeah. I agree.
What is spirituality for you? How could you talk to someone who would say, nope, spirituality isn't for me? How do you convince them that actually it is?
I think that spirituality is you.
Okay.
Spirituality is the way in. It's anything that is not concerning the reality outside of you.
Okay.
Spirituality is getting rid of all those things that you think you are. Discard them all and go down to the essence of your being, which in truth you just are. You're nothing else. This was one of the biggest discoveries I've ever done. Is you listeners, you might struggle with this. Go over it. You might not agree, and then go out and then maybe agree.
Please argue.
Is that I'm Antonello Mirone. You're Robert Breen, aren't you? Edward Breen. Sorry. And I think I'm an optician. I think I'm an artist. I am none of those things. I am not who I think I am. I am not the totality of the experiences I am. I am not the experiences that brought me here. This is my mind tricking me. I just am. As all of you are. All of you listening just are. All the misunderstanding in the world come from this. Is for example, let's say one day, Edward, you're coming into work. You're upset with me. Or maybe you're not, yeah? And you don't say hello to me. There are two ways I could approach, yeah? I could be like, oh, he didn't say hello to me. Oh, I hate it. Why is he doing that? Is he angry with me? Is he upset with me? What have I done wrong? Oh, he's so rude, isn't it? This is the ego talking. This is myself, this is my mind. This is the ego, which is resisting in the past and thinking, why is he doing that? Or, it could just So exactly what is offended? This is how I got to spiritualism, you see, because I was struggling with all my previous relationship, all my work that happened, And also when someone offends me, when a thought hurts me, or when someone just swears at me, I get hurt, right? Or for example, you get hurt. It probably might have happened to you in the past. You get hurt. What exactly is getting hurt?
Yeah.
So you said, it's I, but what is I?
Who is I? Yeah. Yeah. Who am I?
And my default answer is, I, is the totality of things I've done, or I think I am. That would be my answer. This is what the monk told me. Yeah? I gave him this answer. The monk said, but the thoughts can't get hurt. So what are you? And I got stuck there. I didn't know what to tell him.
Yeah.
And you know what he said? He said, I like your second answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that brought me to the point is, so I think the line of reasoning he was bringing me to, because he was trying to get me to a point, wasn't it? That I was allowing my thoughts to harm me. That's powerful, isn't it? What do you think? What do you think for you spiritualism?
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's very powerful. So he was bringing me to the point that when a thought comes in, you see it for what it is. Your anger comes in, you realize it, and the simple thing is that it goes away. But if you cling onto it, and this is the teaching of attachment, if you cling onto it, there's an Indian word which is called vitaka. So when a bad thought comes in, for example, I'm anxious, right? I'm anxious, vitaka. Then a lot of us do this, all of us do this. You fall into vichara, which is the thinking of that thinking, which is, I'm anxious. I can't do this because I'm anxious. You have anxiety of anxiety.
You're thinking about thinking.
Yes. So you're clinging onto that feeling and it ruins your whole day.
Yeah. Yeah. You're essentially using the wrong part of the mind for the wrong job. I mean,
thank you.
The whole, so spirituality, first of all. So I like to keep it nice and simple with spirituality because people trip up on the word, and I think that's problematic for me because it's such an important thing. So I like to just think of the etymology of the word spirit.
Yeah.
So spiritus, which is Latin for spirit, but also Latin for breath. So if we think about spirituality as a study of things that breathe, right? It's a study of life, and that's all it is. It's not something to do with anything supernatural. It's not anything to do with anything outside of yourself. It's spiritus. It's just the life that is you. Now, I think when you kind of hit the nail on the head with the thinking thing, thinking about thinking, and I think I think Alan Watts puts it really nicely. He says something along the lines of what you and I are identifying with as ourselves. So this I that we think we are is simply the part of the brain that is keeping us safe. It is the part of the brain that looks for danger and then analyzes the danger and reacts to the danger.
Yes.
But that's all it's really good at.
Yes.
The problem is it is forefront physically and metaphorically of our minds. It is the front part. It is the bit that gets hit with everything first.
Yes.
And I think what spiritual traditionally has helped us with is that we can learn to soften that first flow. We can learn to just say, that's what the first thing is seen. That's fine. Yeah. Now let it just go back. There's this interesting neurological science.
Neuroscience.
Anyway, neuroscience. That's one. Neuroscience idea that people have that's been come up with called the guilds in the brain. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
So it's how different areas of the brain that we traditionally thought did things actually work together in guilds, and the guilds overlap, right?
Yeah.
But the guilds of the brain, I like this because it aligns with Buddhism. I came across it in a book called Why Buddhism is True. Brilliant. But anyway, so the guilds do most of the background work. so they interact with each other, the visual part, the olfactory part, the thinking part, they all overlap, and they do most of the thinking for you. And they kind of throw things up to the prefrontal cortex, to your thinking mind, to just let it know. So the guild works away in the background and lets your prefrontal, and then this comes up and this comes up. And that's very similar to what happens if you've been meditating for 15, 20 minutes. You can see that these thoughts come from seemingly nowhere.
Yes.
And that's kind of true, because we don't identify with these guilds. They're not really a part of our usual process.
Yes.
So they're basically just throwing things up that they think might be important.
Yes.
Now, we have two choices when these things get thrown up. We can latch onto them and try to use the thinking mind to sort it out. Probably a bad idea, because that's not what it's for.
Yeah.
Or we can just observe it with the thinking mind, just literally just say, oh, is that what's come up now?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you say, oh, is that what's come up now? It just goes away.
Yeah.
And it goes away back into the guilds, and they do the work for you. And it's wonderful because we have this supercomputer on the top of our necks that is so good at doing things.
Yes.
And what we do is we go, no, I'll do that.
Yeah.
We shove it into the front.
Yes.
And the front goes, I don't know what to do with this.
Yes.
I can be afraid. I can be horny. I can be hungry. And that's about all I can do, right?
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
So, but instead, if we can simply learn how to just go,
let go.
There it is. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Off you go. And just get on with our lives.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. But so for me, that's what spirituality is. And that's why I think people shouldn't be afraid of it, because it's not supernatural.
No.
It's not anything woo-woo or whatever. It is just simply learning how to just be.
Yeah.
Stop doing so much and just be.
And the fact that you said the thought coming in and going out, it is a realization of how your mind is really working.
Yeah.
But this is why practice is so important, because if you do not practice, you understand this concept. This is about the fact of learning the theory, but then don't apply it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you get your thought coming in, you understand this, but because you're not practicing, you're still attached to it.
Yeah, you become identified with it.
Yes.
And then it is you.
Your theory knows it because you're not practicing. You don't really like. And a lot of stuff Buddhists say. I mean, Buddhism, got very close to the truth. It does have some parts where sometimes you have to take a little bit more lake, a bit more, but everything is there really.
Yeah, it is all.
One thing that really bugs me about how we live these days, and how I was living as well, wasn't it? Was through, because I was a scientist fundamentally, wasn't it? I was like an engineering. I'm just parts of a puzzle, and conscious is a byproduct of it.
Okay.
So conscious. This is how science. This is how science taught us. How do we exist?
Yeah, no,
they're like, no, you are the same. You're just like atoms. Yeah. And you come up, and what it is, conscious. We don't know what it is. It's just a byproduct of your brain, isn't it?
Yeah. That's.
And you can't. And we adapted all of our knowledge based on this.
Yeah. And we adapted our lives.
And we studied. We studied things on this. And obviously, it can't be. Because funny thing is, when you just do this simple reasoning, and this changed my whole perspective in the past year, is, hold on. If I am going to a concert, a classical concert, and there is the music, Rupert Spira talks about this, so there is music. We'll have to tag him into the references because it's Rupert Spira. So there is a music. He mentions this in his book also, how to the happiness, being the happiness that you are, isn't it? So there is the music. There is you listening to the music, so lost in the music, and then there's you aware of doing that. If I would have to apply that to myself, is me. There is the paper, the canvas. Me drawing on the canvas, and there is me conscious of drawing on the canvas. So my thoughts do not generate my consciousness, because my thoughts, I am thinking them. They are known. They are the object of knowledge. So that means that there's something that knows them. It is
by definition
I. So my consciousness is not a byproduct because it knows them. So my consciousness comes before that.
Yeah, that's a good logical.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, no, I like that.
And the funny thing is, It's simple.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And our Western civilization got there.
Yeah.
Parmenides used to say, what it is, and cannot be, not be. Heraclitus was saying the same thing. We're just a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like Plato got there as well. But our knowledge got fragmented.
Yeah,
it's very fragmented.
I just don't know how it all happened because, so you have spirituality, right? This is the oldest form of whatever. And then you had philosophy, right? Now, maybe they overlap. They do overlap, obviously, but maybe whichever one came first, right? So the philosophers, your Plato and your Aristotle and your whoever, they were primarily, I think, interested in living a better life.
They were.
That was their whole point.
They were.
Which is very much the same as the spiritualists.
Socrates as well.
That was the Epicurus. They were interested in living a better life. So were the spiritual people. They used spirituality. They used supernatural elements and stories and metaphors, but basically to live a better life, right?
Yes.
And then you had the natural philosophers who they were philosophers. They used the same kind of logic, the same kind of way of thinking to do with nature. Great, absolutely. Will also help us live a better life. And then what?
I think
the scientific method was discovered. And I love the scientific method. I think it's brilliant. You observe, you create an experiment, a hypothesis, you create an experiment, you observe the results. It's all very much in line with philosophy and logic. It's perfect. But where did it come about?
I have a theory with it. Rupert Spira mentions it, and also a lot of Buddhists mention it as well. And even my philosophy teacher used to mention it about 20 years ago. Is when philosophers stopped being scientists as well, because as you know, they used to be the age of polymaths. We can say that almost this sort of thinking was there up to maybe Renaissance. But I think the biggest divide started when Cartesio started saying the famous sentence, "I think, therefore I am."
Okay, right.
But it's not this. The truth is,
that's where it starts.
I am, therefore I think. But by saying, like Cartesio says,
I think,
therefore I am, what happens? You literally oppose yourself to reality.
Okay.
You create resistance.
So
This message is the opposite of what Zen Buddhists say.
Yeah. I wonder, did he really, is it a misunderstanding?
It is, because as all things in reality, the truth is in subject.
It's somewhere else.
And we know that because we're opticians. In optics, every time the answer is always the opposite of what you think, isn't it? Yeah. So it's exist. Exist. It comes from Latin, ex sustere. So it means to exist, to stay outside, right? And we base most of our scientific knowledge on that. That we are in opposition of what's outside of us.
So it's the foundation that's wrong. Yeah, it's strange because it has such a rich history. I mean, because I've studied the life of Renaissance people, and their Master of Arts degree in university was everything. All of the knowledge that existed at the time. You learned about the movement of the celestial bodies. You learned about
astrology.
Literature. You learned about medicine. You learned about, and they came out and they then did one of those things or all of those things. They had this holistic knowledge of what worked. Now, obviously, you could not go to university now and learn everything.
No,
that's impossible. No. And I agree, 100%. I do think we could do for all students a condensed version of the old Master's of Arts and Bachelor of Arts degree.
100%.
The arts being everything. A small little whisper, but the traditional everything, the things that make you learn how to learn, that teach you how to think.
Critical mind.
Because
but you'll hit a very big nail on the head, because I was thinking this since I was so young, is we've dispersed too much of our knowledge. We get lost in the details. For example, in physics, and all of the students, they all would do physics 1 and 2. And physics 1 normally is Newtonian, very basic. And then physics 2 normally is like electromagnetism and all that stuff. On physics 1, you spend 6 months studying all sorts of physics, like how object moves, friction and all of that. And I swear to you, it is just 4 formulas repeated in different sources, but just applied to different things.
Yeah.
And you have to solve every day 10 problems about this stuff. But it's always the bloody same formulas.
Yeah, it's not really
if you are clever, if you come from a classical mindset like I was, on a group of 100 students, it was only 2 of us that were coming from. We learned it like this.
Yeah, because you learn the principle.
We learned the principle. But all the others were stuck solving problems the whole semester. We did not do any problems. And we passed the exam with flying colors. And I was like, there is something wrong here.
It's because I was looking up the other day the meaning of the word to learn. And I think there's a missing bit in it, because the definition of the word to learn is something along the lines of to gain knowledge through books or being taught. But I think in the definition of to learn, you should be taught how to understand.
100%.
How to you know. I really do. And I was never taught that. You see, I learned that in adulthood. I didn't have a classical education. I had a decent education. Obviously, in Ireland, it's known that it's a decent education system. But looking back, we were there was no learning how to learn.
Yeah,
and I really regret that.
I have a lot of people might find this offensive. Yeah, it's I think that we have today a very common form of analphabetism.
Go on.
Yeah, I call a lot of people functional analphabets.
Right.
Which basically means they can read their bill statements. Yeah. They can read their bank account. They can read their favorite website.
Yeah.
They can go onto Instagram. They can go onto Facebook. But they cannot comprehend the meaning behind the text.
Right. Okay.
Functionally illiterate. Sorry.
Functionally illiterate. Yeah.
And this is what our school system is creating.
It is.
Functionally literate.
Yeah.
Because how many times you go to school and you say, and I was victim of this, by the way, because I would have loved to go to uni and study classical literature.
I would love to.
Yeah. I was like, why are you going that? It's useless.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, Aristotle, you know what Aristotle, and I should have spit on this, because Aristotle is one of the first sentences in one of his metaphysical books is, use less. You learn something that use less. In Latin is servus. Servus. Yeah. So use less. Something that has no use. That means it's servus is slave of nothing.
Yeah.
That means your knowledge is not slave to an object.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means it's pure knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And what are we trying to get our kids into today?
Yeah.
On stuff that is useful.
Yeah. Exactly, and
what
we've decided is useful, what society deems useful. Yeah.
And you probably learn stuff that is very useful to companies,
of course,
but it's knowledge that within 10 years you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, no, useless. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but you see it now as well. You see that thing that's accelerating. Because the government have removed funding for so many arts degrees. I have a friend who's a poet, and he teaches English literature in Brighton, and he's been concerned for his jobs. Now the man, I believe, is a genius. He in terms of if you speak to him for 10 minutes. It's like a lifetime. It's wonderful. He just effuses life.
Yes.
But probably put him in a company and he wouldn't maybe do very well, or he wouldn't be a good accountant or doctor. But the man is an actual bona fide genius. Now, to make him afraid for his job, I think, is a travesty, because he taught me in part of my liberal arts degree, and just. He didn't really teach me anything, but just speaking to him made me learn so much.
It awakens your spirit.
It does. It awakens your spirit.
It awakens your spirit.
Awakens your spirit.
That's true.
Your breath, yes.
And I feel very sad that, we live in Canterbury, don't we? The home of, it is the home of English literature, isn't it? Which also, I bet I would have loved meeting him, isn't it? Like being an ambassador.
I wouldn't understand him, would I?
No. But I would have loved, he must have been like Berlusconi, isn't it? Knowing like 4 or 5 languages, having friends everywhere, literature, men that, the kings like to send for being an ambassador. It must be such a likable character, isn't it?
Yes.
And, a place where English literature is born, at least Middle English is born, our literature degree has been closed off. University of Kent, Christchurch, they do not teach literature anymore. Really, and from next year, guess what? We're closed? Philosophy.
Really?
Yeah.
It's absolutely awful because it makes no money for the university.
Yes.
Because it's useless.
Yes. I was I was making the glasses. Yeah. This is one of the best things of being an optician, isn't it? That you meet people, isn't it? Like, I feel like it's our jobs are a cover up.
Yeah.
We should do something else. Yeah. Like, I mean, we're doing it now with literally now. But anyway, and I meet the wife of the head of the department of philosophy. And he was preparing himself to be out of job because they're closing next year.
That's disgusting.
And they're not closing because they don't have enough students. It's literally because they think it's useless.
Yeah. But we will suffer in the long term as a society for the lack of people who can think, who can really, truly think for themselves.
Yeah. I think all arts, even classical arts, all philosophers, even today, they're not as good as they should be.
No, well, if this field requires more people because we can only think as much as we can think. It's the multiplication of our knowledges that helps.
Yeah. Socrates used to say, Socrates was like Buddha, by the way. Because Socrates wrote nothing. Yeah. Socrates did not write. He did not believe in writing.
I know.
And
Aristotle wrote everything afterwards, was it?
Plato and Aristotle, both of them. Yeah. And Socrates was like, the true knowledge comes from dialogue.
Yeah.
Dialectos,
but this
like we're doing now.
But Buddha also said one of the three things is Sangha.
Without practicum, there is no Buddhism. That's what Sangha, isn't it? So, And it's funny enough, like Plato wrote most of his books in form of dialogues with this teacher in it. The Phaedrus and all of that. And that goes back to the stuff we were talking at the beginning of this talk, that you can have all of the theory in your head, but if you don't practice,
it amounts to nothing.
It's pointless, isn't it?
Yeah. I think with this closing of philosophy departments, English literature departments, and all the rest, liberal arts more generally, I think where we're going is to nowhere, because all of these knowledge-based courses will churn out people who have knowledge-based jobs who will be superseded by AI. Knowledge is gone. We don't need knowledge in that way anymore. We need people who can think, who are creative, who can create ideas, who can understand what it means to be human. That's the new thing.
I wrote this in one of my books. We'll have to close soon because I think otherwise we'll start churning out on all our topics.
I think we'll stop at an hour.
Stop at an hour because we're doing very well, by the way, aren't we? Yeah. I always thought of AI as a tool. So like humans started, wood as a tool to make fire, chisels to carve, I don't know, branches to tighten, a screw, or,
swords to kill. Yeah.
Swords to kill. So it's a tool. AI is a tool. But a lot of people who probably haven't thought or never had any sort of classical training or stuff, they think, we will be taken over by AI. What exactly is being taken over?
Yeah.
AI is a tool, like chisels and screwdrivers are a tool.
Well, a lot of jobs will be because we're being turned into robots.
Yeah, because AI is a tool. What tool it is? It takes care of all that mental process, which for our brain is boring.
Yeah, and we're not very good at it.
We're not very good at it. We're not very efficient at it.
Yeah.
They're not very efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say they're sort of early AI were calculators. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We could say, we can't be here on the blackboard working all the time. We need a computer for it. Yeah. It's the same.
It's easy to do.
But we are mistaking the tool for our brain. Because of our deterministic view of the world.
But our brains have been trained in that way.
Yes.
We have been turned into calculators.
Yes.
But we're not calculators.
Yes, exactly.
So we need to be nurtured as human beings,
exactly.
not as calculators.
Exactly. Yeah. And and I was telling you about this I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that when AI comes up with something good, it's because we recognize it as such.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is not the AI coming up with a good idea. It is us recognizing it as such.
Yeah. I think there's very few people who will be able to still come up with an idea, though, because we're not being taught how to do it. We're not being taught how to get out of our own way and just let the ideas come.
Yeah,
we're just not. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in school that teaches you how to not believe every stupid thought you have.
Yeah.
Not identify with every stupid thought you have. In fact, it's the opposite almost.
Yeah, and I think this is the way why you're keeping your kids, isn't it? You're keeping them a little bit away. I think if I have kids, I'll to be honest, if I have kids, I'll do the same.
Yeah.
I'm scared of what they're teaching.
It's not. It's a scary thing. It's because it goes against what we've been taught is the right way to do things.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But I think if I can teach the next generation how to think rather than teaching them anything specific, I'll be happy. I'll be happy because then you can learn anything. Look at you. You can learn how to do things in a short period of time if you know how to.
How to learn. If you know how to learn.
Exactly.
That's right. Robert, my teacher, we're going back to the topics of what we started, which is a greater way to concluding, isn't it? Gosh, we are born for this, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Right,
yeah, it's genius.
Robert was telling me, you picked up my skills in a short amount of time because you know how to learn them. And he said, in my curriculum or my arts degree, they never taught me how to learn. And do you know what? It makes sense because in the past, when I was reading, if you read Giorgio Vasari, he was interested in the history of the greatest artists, isn't it? And he specifically mentions that the time to learn how to do very basic carving, draw, paint, being able to paint. So a classical artist, job, being a discreet artist, not famous, discreet artist, was 2 years. In 2 years, you'll be a fully fledged artist.
Yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
But you're talking about time where people had to make their own pigments.
Yeah.
They had to make their own brushes. They had to make their own paper.
Yeah.
They had to make their own ink.
Yeah.
So
that's what they were learning. Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
So take all of that away.
Yeah.
How long would that really take?
Yeah, not very long at all.
Probably how much I learned.
Yeah, probably about 6 months.
Yeah. And I'm teaching kids privately these days.
Yeah.
They're picking up at a speed faster than I am.
Yeah.
They're picking up fast. Now you go into a shop and you buy tubes with the paint. Before you had to make them yourself.
Yeah.
It was a craft in that sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we're hitting very close to 1 hour spot.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered our introduction to what we think spirituality is and why we reached it and where it's going.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, that was a good conversation, and I hope you leave us for more. Thank you for tuning in. And please feel free to be listening more times because we've hit a lot of subjects that we are quite actually well versed in. And it might take maybe you a while to understand some of the points we did, isn't it? Especially about the eye and all of that. And
please disagree and argue as well.
In the comments.
I love the conversation.
Yeah, we love disagreements and Ed likes long comments.
Yeah,
so
my favorite thing.
Yeah. So stay tuned for more. Feel free to comment, and you'll find this on most platforms. And we put references of most stuff that we covered. And
he will.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will. And have a good day. Ed, what else? Thank you. Bye bye.
Free audio post production by alphonic.com.